within a very turbulent region with a lot of challenges internally and externally, has been, of course, confronted with a lot of economic challenges. So I think all the experts has been provoking or trying to advocate that we don't have the luxury to adopt only mitigation measures. We have to substantially targeting the main challenges with bold decisions and trying to confront all the consequences that may being present with this very bold decision. But I think, thanks God, so far we have been able successfully to absorb what are the side consequences and side effects of all the measures that has been taken within the last couple of months. In last March, of course, we managed to finalize the first and second revision with IMF under its extended fund facility, EF. And this has been very important, of course, a step from the Egyptian government and also from the IMF, because it has blessed already all the ongoing structural reform that the Egyptian government was adopting. And of course, this strategic reforms for the economy has been based on main pillars. First of all, to have a full-fledged flexible exchange rate. The other thing is tightening, of course, the fiscal and monetary policy and policies, and of course, slowing down or reducing public expenditures in infrastructure and some other national programs. And last but not least, of course, encouraging the private sector to take the leading position in economic growth and putting a very ambitious target of returning back the contribution of the private sector in the overall investment within this country to exceed 65% within the coming few years. So under all of these main pillars, we have been working in more details in each issue. Let me give you just examples. For example, within the monetary policy, of course, the central bank has been able since March 6 to, of course, adapt the flexible exchange rate. We have been able to, of course, overcome what we called it the backlog of all the demands that were needed within the local market. We have been able to pay a lot of delayed, of course, dues, especially within the local market and even some of our international partners, and managed to increase our foreign currency reserve. And I think one of the major also achievement was to decrease dramatically the negative net foreign assets of the Egyptian banking sector. So all of this, I think, measure also has been implemented in close and complete coordination with the economic group here in the government and, of course, especially with the Ministry of Finance. And we have been able together to decrease dramatically also the overdraft of the Ministry of Finance within the central bank, and maybe my colleague, Minister of Finance, will speak in more detail about this. But related to the monetary side, fiscal side, also there was big steps that the government has been able to achieve, I think, with our objective to control what we can call it the overall debt, the governmental debt, whether external or internal debt of the government, with the target that we go below 80% of the GDP within the coming 2 to 3 years, specifically 2027, if I can recall. Together with this, we, as I was mentioning, we have put a very tight public expenditure procedures. We have been committed to achieve primary surplus annually coming 3 years. Already we are going to reach this year 3.5%, and we are targeting within the coming couple of years to go beyond 5%. I think maybe it will be the world record in terms of primary surplus for any government, but this is our commitment to, of course, overcome what we are facing now with all the challenges. And of course, the most important thing is what we are taking now boldly in reforming all the governmental agencies, including economic authorities and even state ownership enterprises. And we have put a lot of targets and indicators that we are going to achieve within the coming 3 years. We have been able to adjust the monetary law to include not only the governmental bodies within here I'm speaking about the overall budget of the country, but not only to be focusing only on governmental body, but also to include economic authority. So we make sure that there is governance, continuous and sustainable governance issues and monitoring for all agencies affiliated to the government. Last but not least, in expanding our cooperation with our international partners, I think after, of course, having the IMF, and also, of course, having the very important deal with the Emirates, United Arab Emirates of Ras Al Hikma with the 35 billion US dollars, we have managed also to complete our proposed packages with both the World Bank and the EU. So with the World Bank, of course, we are working more and more, in fact, with both parties, the World Bank and the EU, we are trying to focus on, again, how we ensure the resilience of the economy, Egyptian economy, against external shocks, different external shocks. We are trying to focus on increasing the contribution, again, of the private sector in the overall economy, and also transforming the economy to the green, of course, or green transition for our economy with clear targets. So under these three main objectives, we managed to finalize the coming program with the DPF, with the World Bank, with 1.5 billion US dollar, and with the EU, what we call it, the macro financial assistance of a package of 5 billion euro that will take place till 2027. So the most important thing is to secure, of course, what we call it, the foreign currency resources for the Egyptian economy, to make sure that it will move in a very stable manner, even apart, despite all the turbulence that we are facing. But what we were speaking about outside before we enter here, about the external shocks that we are facing now. But the most important thing is to make sure that the economy is moving smoothly, steady, more and more contribution from the private sector.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. And as I think you were describing, you've been very, very busy with a lot of reforms on many fronts at the same time. So congratulations for that. And I know that the private sector in the room and private sector listening to us is very taking a lot of attention to all these changes. And you know, in IFC we have a lot of interactions, not just with private sector globally, but also with private sector in Egypt. And we hear a lot of very strong positive reaction to what's happening, and then we see an interest for resuming strong investment and to participate, to take the role that you are allocating for the private sector in the development of the economy of Egypt. So you mentioned a lot of things that you've been doing, and also some of the goals for 2027 and for the next few years. More specifically on the private sector, you mentioned their role. What kind of next steps do you see? What kind of next steps do you see ahead from your side?
Okay, let me start by saying that within Egypt 2030 vision, we have identified what we call it priority sectors, that we believe that these sectors can lead the growth course, the four main sectors that we believe that can play a pivotal role in the economic growth are industry, agriculture, telecommunication and information technology, and last but not least, tourism. The four main sectors, those sectors, we believe that the private sector should take almost 100% of the contribution within these four main sectors. And let me tell you, in order to translate this into action, real action, we have been engaged within the last year to make big changes and amendment within several laws and regulation. On top of them, of course, the investment law, and of course other regulations and laws that can, of course, ease up and speed up the process of acquiring all kind of approval, license, and procedures of the private sector to get access to land, construction, and even finance and credit from the different organizations within this country. I think on top of this incentives, what has been put is what we call it the golden license. Through this golden license, you get one approval from the cabinet on your project if it meets certain criteria, which is very clear, and it covers, of course, all the sectors that I have mentioned. So you get one and only approval from the cabinet, and by this approval, you can go immediately and start your construction, operation, and everything, without having any obligation towards other organization or getting approval from any bureaucratic agencies that maybe some of you here were complaining about it in the past. Examples like this, since I issued more than now 40 golden licenses, some of those establishments in less than a year were operating on the ground, constructing big establishment, factories, and started the operation within factories, huge factories that it will not only cover Egypt, but will cover the whole region. I want to give precise example about names, but we have here, of course, a lot of international brands and establishments that we managed to convince them to start their operation here in Egypt, of course, given the advantage of Egypt of having, of course, relatively cheaper energy, access to infrastructure, labor, skilled labor, and cheap labor at the same time. So a lot of advantages that we are having here. So the issue of golden license is very important, in addition to the amendment of introducing several incentives regarding lowering a little bit the taxes, returning back some of the VATs, and a lot of other incentives that maybe my colleagues here will have the chance to explain it in much detailed things. So all of this has been contributed, I think, to increase the share of the private sector within the last year. My colleague, the Minister of Planning, knows very well the numbers, the figures, but really we are now seeing that there is a big progress in this, with, again, the objective that we reach within coming 2 or 3 years, 65% of the overall investments to be by the private sector. Another very important thing that we have put a ceiling of the public expenditures. I'm here speaking about all type of public expenditures, and this has been issued by a decree by the Prime Minister, putting a ceiling of 1,000 billion or 1 trillion Egyptian pound to be spent by all state agencies to be just, this is going to be the ceiling for all kind of expenditures or investments, and the rest should be by, of course, led by the private sector. So I think more or less this is some of the steps. Last but not least, of course, and a lot of you are fully aware about it, that December 2022 we issued what we call it the state ownership policy. been prepared in close cooperation and coordination with the private sector, through which we have put a very clear objectives, targets, indicators on sectors where the government will continue to have its contribution, and also other sectors that we are planning to decrease our contribution and our share within the coming 3 years. And last, sectors that we don't have any kind of interest to enter in the Egyptian economy, so that we give a very clear picture to the private sector about where is the government contribution within the overall economy. I'm discussing with my colleague here, the Minister of Finance, the coming 5-year taxing policy to the government and to the country, so that again it will be a very transparent manner, so that every investor will know exactly what's going to happen in the taxing procedures and everything related to all of this. So having all of this, I think measures that have been adapted to the private sector, I'm confident that more and more private contribution will take place within the coming few years. And I'm very keen, almost on a weekly basis, to visit personally a lot of establishments that are being run by the private sector, to listen to what they need to overcome all kind of challenges that they are facing. And I have even what I call it a technical office or a technical unit just dedicated under my direct supervision to overcome any kind of challenges. And of course, with the cooperation of IFC, we created what we call it the asset monetization unit, again under my direct supervision, to work on how we can start to, of course, the divestments of all assets that we are intending as a government to let the private sector take the leading position in controlling and managing all of these assets, because we believe that is very efficient. The private sector is much more efficient than the government in running such kind of establishment, and we are trying to work very hard through this unit, and of course through also the sovereign fund, the Egyptian sovereign fund, to more and more releasing a lot of public assets to the private sector in the coming future.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency, and it's very clear the path that the government is following, and I think the fact that you have this clarity of vision and of planning really helps the private sector make their decisions in terms of where to invest, how to invest, whether it's in the 4 sectors that you mentioned, other sectors, and contributing to the development of the economy. So I think it's an excellent path to follow. And thank you also for mentioning the simplification of procedures for companies. I mean, climate investment in general is extremely important to create incentives for companies to come and contribute. I have one last question for you, because all that you said really highlights the very strong opportunities that are there for private sector, very strong opportunities that are going to really help the people in Egypt. But what do you see as the risks in the coming period?
Honestly speaking, I would like to address all the people here that internally, I'm very confident with all the measures that we have taken that the economy will move in a very successful and stable manner. The main risk, unfortunately, is coming from outside. What's taking place, unfortunately, in our region, directly around our borders, and this is, of course, all what we are now seeing from the geopolitical, of course, issue is representing the main risk that we believe can harm our, of course, economic long vision, of course, development policy. So hopefully with all the effort that we are now trying to exert in trying to calm down these struggles and wars that's taken place, things will, calm down, because this is what we have been experiencing with what is taking place in Gaza, its impact, for example, on the Red Sea. And I think now the whole world is suffering from the huge jump of the cost of trade and shipments and insurance and all the turbulence that has taken place for the global trade. For us, in addition to this, this has also resulted in big cut of the resources or the revenues of the Suez Canal Authority from hard currency. So all of this is because of this external shocks and turbulence that we are not responsible for. So hopefully that all of this, of course, crisis can calm down within the due course of this year, so that things will move smoothly as we are all hoping and planning. Apart from this, of course, is the issue, I think, like all other countries are starting to witness, is climate change and global warming. We are a country that, of course, now we are witnessing or suffering from water scarcity. Of course, the impact of the global warming, some areas in Egypt, specifically in the north coast and the delta, could be exposed to sea rise, the rise of the sea level. So all of this now has directed the Egyptian government to start to have its own, what we call it, national initiatives and platforms that is focusing on the main three issues: water, energy, and food, which is NWAFI initiatives, through which we are working very closely with our international partner to overcome the risks that can be, of course, happening due to all of this, of course, global warming and climate change issues. So I hope that I have summarized what could be the risks that we can encounter in the coming near future, with the hope that we can overcome all of them. But unfortunately, again, almost all of them are external risks. It's not affiliated to kind of policies or strategies within the country, but it's external factors that we are hoping that we can overcome them. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Excellency. Thank you for your insights. This has been a very, very interesting conversation, and I think everyone in the room really learned a lot from what you said. I also agree that the risks that you are highlighting and create a level of uncertainty for all of us around the world. And on the IFC side, I can assure you that we are here to support the people of Egypt and support the country in its development. Together with my colleagues from the World Bank and MIGA, we are all here to help you. Some of the risks you mentioned are something that we might not be able to address, but there's some of them where we can help build resilience, particularly when it comes to climate and other dimensions that we can support. So with this, just let me once again thank you for this very interesting conversation, for your insights, and I'm sure that everyone will benefit a lot from this conversation as we start today. It really sets up the stage for a very insightful conversation today. So thank you.
Thank you very much. And again, I would like to seize the opportunity to welcome all our guests here, whether from the local or international private sector. We are very serious and committed as a government to pave the road for more and more contribution from the private sector in the coming couple of years, and we are really availed to provide any kind of support. My office is open, I'm not exaggerating, 24/7 to receive any kind of requests or even complaints from any challenges, and I'm committed to solve hopefully all of them for the interests of the private sector. Thank you very much.